Hey there and welcome to another training tutorial. And in this video, I'm going to answer some questions concerning the report that I've been receiving lately. And hopefully the questions will help you be able to use the option activity report more in depth. So one of the questions I have received multiple times, especially when we come into earnings, is how do I understand your bullish bias or bearish bias? Well, simply that is just a reading that is over the last 22 days of option activity. And with that, it's taking the calls that have been bought or possibly puts that have been sold, and that's where that bullish bias is coming to. So it's really just about sentiment in the overall option market. Now, that doesn't give the full picture because there's a lot of times when we look at a name like DNR and I say, well, there's a lot of share blocks that traded with it today with the option activity. Now, what that simply means is that buying or the option activity tied to the shares is typically what's called a volatility play, where they could be long options and long calls, or short stock and long calls, and they're playing just a volatility difference. So there's really no clear decisiveness in that when I can read it. It takes a little bit of time for me to read through that, or kind of focus in, kind of understanding where these blocks traded, if they were bought on the offer. It's not like option activity where there's that transparency. But typically, if these options are tied to these shares, it's some kind of volatility play. Also, it could be where these calls are being bought as a hedge. So it's showing that bullish sentiment, but in actuality, they're short stock and they're using the options to hedge. With this as well, with the option activity, we want to focus in on the earning names. Now, earnings to me are a bit of a wild card, and you have to understand them. There's a lot of names that come across at times, and in my wording, when we look at this, you could tell by things that I like. So if I give a little bit more emphasis, like this Trimble navigation, I said there's a nice triangle forming on the daily prices, or the daily chart, and prices are looking to continue to push higher. That you could tell I'm bullish on, but that's not an earnings name. In earnings names, I'll issue out a trade alert, or I'll say, hey, this action is interesting, and what I'm looking for simply is this a pattern to form that is a bull flag or some kind of triangle, and then we're seeing these calls being bought here. So when we look at, if you look at a DNR, this one pulled back. JRCC, the same thing. Geron Corp, the same thing as well. So there really wasn't anything that was really appealing to me, but I also want to be able to provide some information, maybe that you have this name going into earnings and you need to look to take profit or understand the sentiment, and maybe a little bit more research than I do that you have been able to put into, and that's why I try to get this the unusual option activity report out at least an hour before the close, so you can go through these names. When we look through some of the other names on the report, what I'm trying to provide to you is the overall bias. When we look at option activity, like I have suggested so many times, is that this is an indication of interest. So there's a lot of times where we see this option activity, and this is leading the future price movement of the stock. So this is why I try to provide it. Now, not all these names are ones that I'm interested in, and there could be different reasons. Because I'm purely a technical trader, I'm looking for patterns. So there's times where there's this option activity that 2 days later moves up higher because there are calls being bought, but I really just didn't see the setup. I thought there's this more risk to reward. So that's just how my trading is. Also, there's a lot of times where there's a fundamental story to it. I'm not a fundamental trader, and some others that are part of the service are. So it's really just this kind of a filtered list of names that I go through or I'm providing, and then I'm letting you try to find some names that are interesting to you as well, so you could be able to trade or keep an eye out, because I can't focus on all the names out there. When I go through the option activity, there's a lot of times where I'm going at least through 50 names and trying to find the most interesting ones and filter those down. But then at the end of the day, there's a lot more that I look to go through to see if there's anything there. So maybe some option activity that is a little bit lighter, meaning that not hitting my system as strong as some of these others. I'm trying to look for those secret buyers trying to step in. So really, when we come down and look at this list, what I do is I create a watch list and I put it into my trading platform, and I keep a list of these names. I also set alerts, and the easiest way I would say to keep an alert for yourself, which I have a video on in this course, is I would just copy what I've posted here. So if there's a name that's interesting, I would post, or I would copy it, and I would put it as part of the alert. So those price alerts, I would put that in. If the stock got above a level that I was very interested in, I would copy this, or in my own words, I would tell myself the reason why I'm setting this alert, that on 5/2/2002, or even 5/2, or May 2nd, whatever you want to word it as, that these May 40 calls were being bought 2,046 times with opening buyers at 30 cents. So maybe there's a level that I'm watching for, or a support level I'm looking for, and I can put this in there, and I can issue the alert, or I have that alert and I know why, without having to go through my notes on my notepad, which I have as well, to be able to inform me. So really, the option activity is what I use, and I think this is a very good list of names because of what we've seen in many cases before of the option activity leading the future price movement. So it's really just for you to be able to create a list, and looking at earnings names, which give a lot of opportunity to be able to filter some of these names and be able to play some of the earnings. But the weight that I put on these earnings names at times are a little bit lower, so I won't risk as much because I think it's a wild card. But there's a lot of times where you see some very straightforward aggressive call buying, which I will write about, and I'll say that for a wild card or a lotto ticket trade, this one would make sense. So it's really about my wording. Sometimes when I'm just writing something like this, I'm just writing out the option activity for you so you could take a look at it. When I elaborate a little bit more, then you could tell by my tone or what I'm saying that there's a little bit more of interest on my part, and maybe you should look at it as well and see if there's more interest on your part. So that hopefully will answer all your questions on this. And if you have any more, if I get continued questions about the option activity, I will make another video and be able to help you guys more. So thank you for watching. After you subscribe to the channel below, make sure you head over to optionsizzle.com and download my free report on how I outline the process of finding options that are on the verge for explosive moves.